And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the unceded and traditional territory of the Tsimshian people. In 1970, the tanker SS Arrow ran aground in the Atlantic Ocean near Nova Scotia and spilled approximately 10 million liters of fuel oil, enough to fill 4.5 Olympic-sized swimming pools. On today's Open Connection, we open our archives to bring you this story from 1991.
The workshop was sponsored by Petro-Canada and Burrard Clean, a company that was originally set up to deal with spills in the Vancouver Harbour area. The key to quick response is mobility, and booms can be speedily deployed to act as a catching device for oil. The boom must also be set out carefully.
As you can see, this boom hasn't been unpacked. It's relatively new insofar as it hasn't been used before. One of the problems with putting boom, and you'll see they're going through it now, is if you don't pay due care and attention, it will be twisting as you deploy it. And they have that problem. They have that problem already.
The material being used to simulate the oil is breakfast cereal, biodegradable, and the birds will enjoy eating it later. The boom is maneuverable, and the conditions on this particular day were very good.
Now today is an ideal time if you're going to have a spill when you're using boom. This is ideal. You know, if you've got a 20-knot wind and a 6-foot waves, the position is 180 degrees in the other direction. Yes.
In rough seas, however, the situation can be quite different, and the boat could become quite unstable. The object is to gather the oil into a confined space.
Typically, you could bring this close into the shore and keep tightening up the boom and increasing the thickness of the oil so that you could bring a vacuum truck or some more sorbents, whatever is going to be used as a medium to bring that oil off the water into a contained state. You will know when these are working.
Squares of absorbent material can be used to mop up the oil, but then there's the problem of what to do with the material afterwards.
There is a problem with disposal of these things, and somebody suggested putting them in a landfill this morning. These are not the ideal things to put in a landfill. They will retain a hell of a lot of oil within the body of the sorbent, and to put that in a landfill without very strict management of it could cause a leaching which will go into the soil and into a water column, something of that nature. I'm suggesting under certain controlled conditions, incineration is most likely the best way to go. But you'd only do that really when you've spoken to the MOE people and said, hey, I've got vast quantities of this material around, or whatever it might be, and I want to get rid of them. And they will likely give you, or should give you, an alternative, either to burn them or some other means of disposal.
The workshop participants also practiced how to deal with minor spills into running water.
My only point would be here that you'd reverse the angle and bring it in this side, because if you're bringing a vacuum truck, it's easier to bring the hose down from this side, where you've got a highway, into this area and suck the oil out from there. So it's just a matter of thinking, what's my next step? It goes back to strategies we were discussing earlier. And the sharper the angle, the better, guys. The sharper the angle, the better.
Barriers of material such as straw can help to hold back the spilled substances.
If we put some sorbent in that little niche down there where that oil's escaping, we'd have a nice little collection pool. We could put a vacuum hose in, lift up the crap, and away we go.
Vacuum trucks are usually used to remove the oil once it's been contained in a small space.
Okay, one of the problems with a vacuum truck is that, assume that is the level of the water. The guy comes down and he puts his hose in round about here. Okay, are you with me? And then sucks. Now the object of that, I think, is to empty the lake, particularly if you're paying for the vacuum truck by the load. What you want to do is to hold the vacuum hose just above the water level, just above where the oil is floating, and the oil will actually leap up 2, 3, 4 inches, and we've seen that. It'll leap 2 or 3, 4 inches into the hose, and then you minimize the water. But it's inevitable you're going to get water. And you can put a water and oily mixture in here. And it is possible to decant using this little device here. You can, by using it, let out a certain amount of water. Obviously you've got to take a very keen eye as to how much water does come out, but you can let a certain amount of water so you get eventually 100% oil or oily mixture in here that can't be separated readily.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. The amount of marine oil spills and the amount of oil spilled worldwide is decreased due to improved safety measures, even though the volume of oil carried by ships has increased significantly. Let us return to their archives with Environment Canada's Keith Urbon.
Because of the increased awareness everyone has about the environment nowadays, there's much more effort put into training personnel in how to respond to spills of oil and other materials.
It has dramatically improved over the last several years. We've been working on this particular type of prevention program for about 15 years now with industry and the petroleum companies, and we're finding now that the awareness is very, very high. People give the environment a very high priority in their lifestyles, and we like to convey our programs in that respect to say, yes, prevention is great, make sure that people contingency plan, make sure that they take care and use common sense.
There are 2 equipment packages in the Terrace Kitimat area available to anyone who needs them.
Since Kitimat is primarily a sea base, we leave a boom here in a trailer. It's a large trailer. It's about 1,000 feet of boom, ordinary sea boom, that we pull out and try to corral any spill that we have out there. In Terrace, we have the rest of the package, which is basically stuff that you'd like to use for cleaning up at a stream or around a river, or just basically on a bulk plant site or some land-based area. That is just 3 steel boxes or 4 steel boxes, depending what size the packages are. And this package has, I believe, 4 steel boxes at the Terrace Fire Department, and they have boots in it, they have shovels, they have rakes, and they have some absorbent gas detectors, a chainsaw, paraphernalia of that nature. And there's primarily just the boom in the trailer here at the bulk plant in Kitimat.
And if a spill does happen in the Kitimat Harbour, a plan swings into action right away.
Well, we'll identify which terminal it's occurred at, or it may be at anchorage, or somewhere in a public access to a beach or foreshore. And without attributing the cause or fault to being the ship, it could be a barge, it could be something unrelated to the ship, we'll immediately try and locate and identify the direction of it, its chemical makeup, and mobilize the PEP coordinator and fire department, our auxiliary Coast Guard, and meantime notify the regional Coast Guard in Prince Rupert, ship safety, that we have in fact incurred a spill. And our cooperative of the oil companies with a trailer of booming and skimming equipment will be sent to the site as quickly as possible, because the first half hour to an hour are the most critical time when a lot of the preventive work can be done, and a minor to moderate spill can be largely contained.
If a ship is suspected of having caused an oil spill, the owners must post a $30,000 bond before it leaves Canadian waters. And nowadays, there are also better laws.
On board ships, the regulations have tightened up such that international law pretty well matches up with Canadian Shipping Act and our environmental laws worldwide, so that ships are also more internally controlled than in the past.
Now 8 months after being brought to the shelter, 16-month-old Trouble is healthy and ready to get back to the wild. But it wasn't easy to find a place to release her. The Conservation Office for Bella Coola didn't want a cub that had been in captivity, and zoos didn't want her either.
So what they've done then, rather than putting the bear down, they cleared it with Victoria to release the bear as close to the borders where it came from as possible. So if there's migration in that area anyway, then it will have the least impact if there is a difference in genes or whatever, what they're worrying about, illnesses and so on and so forth.
Langan, who along with husband Peter own the shelter, says all their other bears were released many weeks ago, but the problem finding a spot for trouble delayed her release until it was almost too late.
We usually release them as soon as the snow is gone and the habitat is okay. So they have all summer to get themselves used and familiarized with territory, to eat up enough of it's all new food for them. They have to forage for themselves. It's not getting put in front of them anymore like it has been for the last year. So it's
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. How many times has it happened? The forecast called for no rain, and it rained. Or the meteorologist says, just looking for an inch or two of snow, then a half foot of snow fell. Let us return to the archives with a 1991 publication from Environment Canada.
To British Columbians, the sea is a natural extension of all our land-based activities. We see it as a playground, as a highway, and as a source of commerce, trade, and food. More than 70% of us live within 20 miles of the ocean, so we grow up with it and feel pretty comfortable around it.
Get ready.
But the Pacific Ocean, even close to shore, can be fickle and destructive. Winds and waves can increase suddenly on the Pacific coast. The results can be disastrous. So everyone who ventures onto the waters of the West Coast should be aware of the potential for danger. To help interpret how weather patterns, local topography, and marine hazards will influence the conditions you'll encounter on your voyage, Environment Canada has published a booklet on marine weather hazards along the British Columbia coast. Knowing how to read weather signs and how to get reliable weather information is essential to safe boat handling on the ocean waters of the Pacific coast.
Stan, this low is really beginning to wind up, and all our computer models are taking it straight across Queen Charlotte Sound. I've already got a storm warning up now for the northwest corner of the island, and I'd like to extend it at this next issue down into the southwest flank of the island. What do you think?
Sounds great, John. I don't see any problem.
Okay, well, I'll go issue an immediate storm warning for the southwest corner, and that way we'll get out ahead of it about 24 hours.
Okay, John.
The Atmospheric Environment Service of Environment Canada supplies up-to-date information on the weather as it moves across the Pacific and onto our shores. Using a weather information gathering network and satellite images, forecasts are developed and made available to the public 24 hours a day.
Tofino Radio, Pacific Weather Center with a storm warning for the west coast, Vancouver Island south.
The work of the Weather Service can help to prevent marine incidents on the West Coast through prediction and presentation of information about weather hazards. Safe passage across ocean waters requires application of that knowledge. When it comes to security on the sea, the Weather Service and the public share a common goal: marine safety. The Atmospheric Environment Service and everyone who ventures onto the ocean are connected by a shared responsibility. Marine safety is dependent on a number of factors, including the seaworthiness of your vessel and the safety equipment on board. It's also dependent on you and your marine skills.
Hey, Joe! Oh, thanks. Just what I needed. Well, what do you think? Is this going to hold? Looks good right now, but it's supposed to get worse. You never know with the weather. This time of year changes very rapidly.
The key to marine safety lies in good judgment, knowing when to venture out and when to seek a safe harbor.
Synopsis. A frontal system approaching from the west will reach the central coast.
Weather observations from many coastal stations and forecasts from the Pacific Weather Center are transmitted to mariners by the Canadian Coast Guard by way of VHF continuous marine broadcasts. As part of your responsibility to marine safety, you should be able to interpret how the forecast winds are influenced by local topography. Seas can also be modified by local tides and currents. Marine hazards can and do occur in any area of our coast. For example, the crew of our fishing boat is beginning to feel the effects of increasing wave height. Waves are caused by winds blowing over the surface of the water. As the winds increase, the waves gradually build higher. Closer to shore, waves can be transformed into steep breaking waves. That's when they move into shallow waters and are confronted by an opposing tidal current or a river outflow. For example, breaking waves occur near the mouth of the Fraser River when strong northwest winds blow across the Strait of Georgia. The resulting seas steepen over the shallow waters near the mouth of the Fraser. The waves become even steeper and can break when they are opposed by the tide and river outflow.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
In 1978, Princeton University engineering student Diane Hartley was writing her senior thesis about New York City's Citicorp Center design. As part of that work, she analyzed the structural design and calculated stress from cornering winds, finding them higher than the maximum expected. Later the same year, the proposed structural repairs were completed. In this final segment of Open Connection, we return to the archives to learn more about wind shear.
These sports fishermen seem to be in a sheltered area, but gusty winds and dangerous sea conditions can develop, influenced by local terrain. The land masses that give us a feeling of safety can amplify adverse conditions. Cornering winds, that is, winds that flow around an island, will be stronger on the left corner of the island when viewed with the wind at your back. Lighter winds will be encountered on the right corner. Funneling winds occur when wind is forced through a narrow opening between adjacent land areas, causing an increase in wind speed. Being aware of these effects can help you avoid them, or move to a safe area if you suddenly encounter adverse conditions. In order to develop accurate marine forecasts, the Pacific Weather Center gathers masses of data on a continuous basis. This information helps the marine forecaster, a specialist in marine weather conditions, to produce up-to-date, accurate forecasts. But satellites and computers can only supply so much data. A lot of important information comes directly from mariners at sea. Along the BC coast, there are several weather MERIP stations. MERIP stands for Mariner Reporting System. MERIP operators are in personal contact with mariners who supply observations of local conditions.
Courageous, Cayuga MERIP Station.
Hi, Sherry. My position is about 15 miles north of Cayuga. Got a MERIP report for you. Winds southeast, blowing gales, 35 to 40 knots here. Seas are very heavy. Over.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll get to the weather station right now in Vancouver and let them know what your report is.
Yeah, okay, Sherry. Give me a call if conditions are going to get any worse. Over.
Topino Coast Guard Radio, the Sonora 2. Roger, I have a MERIP weather report. Are you ready to copy, over?
The Sonora 2, Topino Roger, ready to copy. Go ahead.
We're about 3 miles south of Cape Beale, and the wind is increasing rapidly. Right now it's a northwest 3-5 knots and gusty.
And the seas are about 10 feet and going north.
Good morning, Pacific Weather Center, Marine Forecaster.
Good morning, John. It's Shear.
The MERIP operators pass this important local data directly to the marine forecaster at the Pacific Weather Center. These reports help to keep forecasts up to date and accurate.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're getting reports out there of 5-meter seas already. Look for the seas to build to near 9 meters late tonight. And then once the winds shift tomorrow morning, they'll settle back to about 4 meters tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, okay. Well, I better let this guy know what's happening then so he can head in for shelter.
MERIP operators also provide mariners with updated weather reports on request.
Cayuga MERIP Station.
Cayuga, Courageous, over.
Yeah, hi. I just talked to the Vancouver Weather Office. They're forecasting southeast.
As conditions can change quickly on the coast, you need to constantly reassess the situation during the course of your voyage.
Hey, Joe, I think that's enough for the day. I'm going to turn it around.
Well, I think we better go home, Jeremy. Weather's only going to get worse.
I think we should think about heading back into the harbor.
Oh, it's the best sail we've had all week.
The strongest winds along the BC coast often accompany intense coastal lows and the fronts associated with them. The first zone of strong winds is found just ahead of the front, but a second band of strong winds often follows the low pressure center. The captain of the sailboat wanted to use the lee of the island as a windbreak. He thought this would allow him to safely take down his sails. Instead, he has found himself in strong, gusty winds that have created a dangerous condition. In this instance, the seas are smaller in the lee of the island, but the gusty winds have actually made the situation worse.
Out of control here.
By delaying the decision to head in, the captain of the sailboat has placed himself and his crew in danger.
Okay, George, let's get this main down, eh? Let's swing her around. Hard. Really hard, really hard, really hard.
He now has to rely on an inexperienced crew to help bring his vessel under control.
Okay, let's get that sail down now, eh? Okay, let's get her down. Stuck, Dave! Stuck! Okay, hang on. I'll get somebody to take the helm, and then I'll give you a hand.
As the master of your vessel, it's your responsibility to assure its safe operation. Keeping abreast of the changes in the weather is a constant challenge, but by listening to weather forecasts and understanding how local effects can modify them, you can more accurately determine the weather you're about to encounter. We all share a responsibility for marine safety. The Weather Service will do its part, and one way you can help to do yours is by always doing a weather checklist. The Pacific Ocean is a gift that we all share. But no matter how long we've lived next to it, we should never underestimate its power. It's up to everyone who ventures out to sea to be aware of the weather and take responsibility for our actions. A variety of information is available to assist you in making a weather-wise decision. Marine weather hazards along the British Columbia coast details weather patterns and the resulting sea conditions that can threaten your vessel. It identifies local hazards that can intensify sea conditions far in excess of the broadcast marine forecast. By learning how these local hazards can affect your passage, you will make your journey safer for your crew and passengers. Marine safety, a shared responsibility.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.